Medusa. Medusa is one of 3 Gorgon sisters, and she is the only one who can actually die. Her sisters were born immortal. Medusa was not. That single detail is the reason a hero ever dares to hunt her at all. Anyone who meets her eyes turns to solid stone within seconds. Around her cave, the ground is littered with statues of men frozen mid-step, mid-reach, mid-scream. Perseus cannot look at her directly and still survive the swing, so he uses a polished shield as a mirror, tracking her reflection instead of her face, and takes her head while she sleeps. Even severed, the head keeps its power. Perseus uses it later to turn a hostile king to stone at his own wedding feast. In most versions, Medusa was not born a monster. She was a priestess in Athena's temple until Poseidon attacked her there, and Athena punished the victim instead of the god, turning her hair to snakes and her gaze to a weapon. The face everyone fears was carved by someone else's anger, Hydra. The Hydra is a multi-headed serpent living in the swamp of Lerna, and it is Hercules' second labor. Every normal weapon fails against it for one reason: cut off a head, and 2 grow back from the wound. One of its heads cannot be killed by any method at all. Hercules solves the regrowth problem with fire, having his nephew sear each stump the instant a head falls, so nothing has the chance to regenerate. The immortal head he simply buries under a massive boulder, alive but trapped forever. Before leaving, he dips his arrows in the creature's blood, which is lethal enough to kill instantly. Years later, one of those same arrows brushes his own skin and starts the slow poisoning that eventually kills him. The monster's venom outlived the monster by decades. Today, Hydra effect is a phrase used outside mythology entirely, describing any problem that multiplies the moment you try to attack it head-on, in business, in politics, in ecosystems full of invasive species. Minotaur. The Minotaur has the body of a man and the head of a bull, and he lives beneath the palace of Knossos on Crete, inside a maze built specifically so nothing that enters can find its way back out. He did not choose to exist. His mother was cursed to fall in love with a bull as punishment for a broken promise her husband made to the gods, and the Minotaur was the result: a child neither fully human nor fully animal, feared by the very father who raised him. Unable to kill him, and unable to let him roam free, the king locks him underground and feeds him a tribute of 14 young people sent from Athens every few years. None of them ever walk out again, until Theseus volunteers to go in as one of the 14, guided by a single spool of thread given to him by the king's own daughter. He kills the Minotaur with his bare hands and follows the thread back to the entrance. The maze he died in was not a myth invented from nothing. The real Palace of Knossos still stands on Crete today, its floor plan genuinely confusing enough that modern visitors still lose track of which corridor they entered from. Cerberus. Cerberus is the 3-headed dog stationed at the gate of the underworld, and his job has nothing to do with keeping intruders out. The dead enter freely. His entire purpose is making sure none of them ever leave. 3 different heroes get past him in 3 completely different ways. Orpheus plays music gentle enough to put all 3 heads to sleep at once. A guide leading another hero simply drugs him with sedative-laced bread. Hercules, ordered to bring him to the surface without using any weapon at all, just overpowers him with raw strength and drags him up by force. Nobody defeats Cerberus by fighting fair. Music, drugs, and sheer muscle all work better than a sword ever could. He is not cruel or vicious in most tellings, just relentlessly loyal to a job nobody else wants, which is possibly why one of Pluto's own moons is named directly after him, a dog still standing guard at the edge of a world named for the god of the dead. Chimera. The Chimera has the body of a lion, a goat's head rising from its back, and a live serpent for a tail, and it breathes fire hot enough to burn entire fields black. It lives in the hills of Lycia, and no soldier can get close enough to land a hit without being burned first. A hero named Bellerophon solves the range problem by attacking from the air, riding the winged horse Pegasus above the flames instead of walking into them. His actual weapon is almost an afterthought, a lump of lead fixed to his spear tip, which he drives straight into the creature's open mouth. The Chimera's own fire melts the lead inside its throat, and the creature kills itself from the inside out. She was never a random monster assembled from spare animal parts for shock value. In most origin stories, she is one child among several, born to two monsters, siblings to creatures just as dangerous as she is. Today, the word chimera describes something very real in biology: any organism carrying two genetically distinct sets of cells in one body, a condition that occurs naturally in humans. Sphinx. The Sphinx has a woman's head, a lion's body, and the wings of an eagle, and she sits on the road outside Thebes, stopping every single traveler who tries to pass. She asks one riddle, answer correctly, and she lets you through. Answer wrong, and she kills you on the spot, which is why nobody has ever gotten past her alive. The riddle asks what walks on 4 legs at dawn, 2 legs at midday, and 3 legs by evening, and the answer is a human life itself, crawling as an infant, walking upright as an adult, leaning on a cane in old age. Oedipus is the first traveler to answer correctly, and the moment he does, the Sphinx throws herself from the cliff and dies. She was never guarding the road for her own reasons. In most versions, she was sent by the gods as a punishment aimed squarely at the city itself, a living penalty for a crime the citizens of Thebes had already committed long before Oedipus ever arrived. Her shape was not even invented in Greece. A sphinx carved from solid stone had already been standing in Egypt for roughly 2,000 years before anyone in Thebes ever told this story. Echidna. Echidna is half woman, half serpent from the waist down, and she lives hidden inside a cave, far from any city, any road, any traveler who might stumble across her by accident. Almost nobody hunts her directly, because almost nobody needs to. Her danger is not what she does herself, it is what she produces. Paired with the storm giant Typhon, she becomes the mother of nearly every major monster in Greek myth: the Hydra, the Chimera, Cerberus, and more, each one raised in that same hidden cave before being sent out into the world. In most versions, no hero ever manages to track her down and kill her in a fair fight. She simply outlives her monstrous children, watching hero after hero return home boasting about defeating one of her offspring while she remains untouched underground. Her name was borrowed centuries later for something far less frightening: the modern egg-laying mammal called the Echidna, chosen because, like her, it seemed to blur the line between two completely different kinds of creature. Nemean lion. The Nemean lion is a lion the size of a small building, and its golden fur cannot be pierced by any blade, any arrow, or any spear a mortal can throw at it. It has been killing villagers around Nemea for years, by the time Hercules is sent after it as his first labor. He tries an arrow first, and watches it bounce off the lion's hide without leaving a mark. Realizing no weapon will work, he corners the lion inside its own cave, blocks the second exit, and strangles it with his bare hands. Killing it turns out to be the easy part. Skinning it is the real problem, since the same hide that stopped every weapon also stops every knife. Hercules eventually manages it using one of the lion's own claws, the only thing sharp enough to cut through fur that nothing else could touch. He wears the pelt afterward as armor no blade can pierce, which is why nearly every statue and painting of Hercules shows him wrapped in a lion's head and mane. In some versions, the lion did not simply wander down from the hills. It was placed there on purpose, raised specifically as a weapon aimed at Hercules long before he ever arrived. Harpies. Harpies are winged women with the bodies of birds, and they move faster than any human can run, which makes them almost impossible to fight off once they decide to attack. Their favorite target is not treasure or blood, it is food. A blind king named Phineas is cursed with a feast that appears in front of him every single day, and every single day the Harpies swoop down before he can take a bite, stealing most of it, and fouling whatever they leave behind until nothing edible remains. He is left permanently starving, surrounded by food he can never actually eat. Two winged brothers traveling with a passing crew of sailors finally chase the Harpies off, fast enough in flight to keep pace with them for the first time, driving them away long enough for Phineas to eat an uninterrupted meal. Even this curse was not random cruelty. Phineas was being punished for revealing secrets that belonged to the gods alone, and the Harpies were simply the method of enforcement, not villains acting on their own. The word harpy still gets used today as an insult, centuries after anyone remembers where it actually came from. Talos. Talos is not born from any monster parent at all. He is a giant made entirely of bronze, forged by the god of the forge himself, and his only job is walking the coastline of Crete 3 times a day, watching for ships. If a ship gets too close, he throws boulders at it from the cliffs. If sailors somehow make it to shore, he heats his own metal body red-hot in a fire and pulls them into a fatal embrace. For years nothing gets past him, because there is only one way to actually kill him. A single vein of magical fluid runs through his entire body, sealed shut by one bronze pin at his ankle, and that pin is the only weak point on his entire frame. When the sorceress Medea finally faces him, she does not fight him directly at all. She tricks him into believing she can make him immortal, then works the pin loose while he is distracted, and the fluid drains out of him until he collapses on the beach, lifeless. Talos was never a wild creature choosing to hunt. He was a machine following orders, defeated not by strength but by a single flaw someone was clever enough to find.